Chris Jones, and that's about it. The Kansas City Chiefs struggle at the defensive tackle position. It is a position which is very difficult in the NFL in general. They have guys that can contribute. They have one guy in Mike Pennell that is kind of, hopefully, going to be stowed away until the playoffs, only then to be let out of the cage to wreak havoc. But the defensive tackle position for the Kansas City Chiefs is sort of the opposite of the defensive end position. The defensive end position has several guys who are kind of at the top of the rotation. The defensive end is a position for the Kansas City Chiefs that is just chock full of young players. Here, the Kansas City Chiefs have 8 defensive tackles. 5 of them are 27 years old or over, leaving only Levitt, who is 24, Wharton, and Farrell, those two being 25. But as I said earlier, the defensive tackle position in the NFL is one that's very difficult to find difference makers. There's a lot of guys who can play the game of football, who can play the position of defensive tackle, but to find game changers is difficult. Only one defensive tackle was deemed worthy of being a first-round selection in last year's NFL draft. The year before, there were 4 first-round defensive tackles and only 21 defensive tackles selected total, meaning that 19% of the defensive tackles that teams thought were worth drafting were taken in the first round. In 2022, there were 2 first-rounders and 19 defensive tackles total. All of those draft picks, only 19 defensive tackles. In 2021, there were 0 players deemed worthy of being first-round selections, and only 19 defensive tackles that were selected overall. The defensive tackle position is going to be difficult for the Kansas City Chiefs to adequately fill so long as they are winning so many games. So there we have Chris Jones listed at the top of the defensive tackle rotation. This is an obvious choice. Last year he played 741 snaps, a massive decrease in snaps from the 2022 season where he played 916 snaps, but that in and of itself was a large step up from previous iterations of Chris Jones for the Kansas City Chiefs. In fact, he had never played more than 773 snaps in the NFL, and that was the 2018 season, which was followed by 3 consecutive seasons of snaps in the 600 snap range. 6'6" and 310 are still the case despite the fact that he is 29 years old, and that 5.03 40-yard dash will always be impressive considering he was as thrown off balance as he was. Reportedly, after that 40-yard dash, he moved on to the next station to get his hands measured, and they just waved him along. Along with that decrease in snap counts, his sack total fell from, I guess I probably shouldn't talk about sacks after talking about his 40-yard dash, but his sack total fell from 15.5 sacks all the way down to 10.5, but 10.5 is way closer to his sort of career normal. His career average for sacks per season is 9.4. And frankly, since he just signed a relatively long-term contract for a guy who finds himself 29 years old, I kind of hope he falls back down into the 600 rep range. If he is able to be relegated to 600 snaps, that will keep him fresher for the playoffs, and it keeps a few snaps off of his knees heading into the next season. But for that to happen, it is likely the Kansas City Chiefs will have to have greater contributions from other players on the roster, namely, perhaps, Derek Nottie. And look, I know I started the video with a bit of a knock on the rest of the guys at defensive tackle, but Derek Nottie is fine. He is a run-stopping defensive tackle. He played the second most snaps of his entire career last season at 498, topped only by his second year in the league where he played 599. He did not see a production increase. In fact, he had the second worst season of his career as far as tackles are concerned, registering only 29 stops on the season, getting just 1 sack. But that is not Derek Notty's role in this defense. Derek Notty is kept around in order to keep the linebackers clean and to make sure that you can't just blindly triple team Chris Jones. The criticism that I am going to levy against Derek Notty is going to come up again a few spots later on this depth chart, and it's just this. Derek Notty has never really gotten better. He entered the league, and look, this isn't the biggest sin in the world. He is who he is. Mecole Hardman entered the league and never really got better. It appears that the Kansas City Chiefs are getting the most out of their players because a lot of times when these guys who seem to be at their ceiling go on to other teams, they regress. We saw this with Mecole Hardman last season, basically being buried on the Jets depth chart. Derek Notty is a guy that has 3 rings for a reason. He's a good piece to have around. It's just probably best if it's not at the top of your depth chart. It's the same thing that I say about Justin Watson on the wide receiver core. Justin Watson is a really good number 4 wide receiver. When he's out there at the X spot, your team is in trouble. Moving on to number 3 here, the Super Bowl hero himself, the Incredible Hulk, Mike Pennel, 6'4", 330 pounds, 33 years old, runs a whopping 5.23 40-yard dash. Mike Pennel should be on the sidelines riding the stationary bike for 60 minutes every Sunday until the playoffs. Is this hyperbole? Kind of. Mike Pennel played 45 regular season snaps last year, and when it was time for the Super Bowl, Mike Pennel looked like an unstoppable force at times. The crazy part about this is Mike Pennel's career high for snaps in a season, and remember, he's 33 years old. He has been in the NFL since 2014. His career high for snaps in a season happened in 2022, where he had 365 snaps for Chicago. Steve Spagnuolo, I beg of you, if he wants to shoot dice on the sidelines, I will buy the dice. If he wants to sing show tunes all Sunday long, then baby, let's do the time warp again. If it turns out that Mike Pennel is particularly practiced with balloon animals, I know helium is expensive, but we will raise the money. Please, oh please, oh please, save Mike Pennel for the postseason. A fresh and furious Mike Pennel is a key to success. Next is maybe the biggest surprise on this entire list. I have Fabian Levette listed above Tershawn Wharton. And I'm going to talk about this tandem sort of as a couple here. So Tershawn Wharton entered the NFL in 2020 and surprised everyone in the organization, all the fans, by racking up 518 snaps of defense, this coming after playing at Missouri S&T. And, guys, I live in Missouri. I had no idea Missouri S&T had a football team. I knew guys that went to college to play football, a lot of them at the lower levels of competition here in Missouri, and never knew they had a football team. But emerging from that situation was Tershawn Wharton at 6'1", 317 pounds apparently now. But guys, everything inside of me believes that was a misprint on the Chiefs' depth chart, because everyone remembers sort of Tershawn Wharton came into the league weighing just 260 pounds. He got up to 280 pounds. And everywhere else that I see him listed, Pro Football Reference, ESPN, etc., has him at 280 pounds. Whatever the case, Tershawn Wharton's career is already a victory, having become a member of the Kansas City Chiefs as an undrafted rookie free agent from an obscure college as an undersized defensive tackle being one of the more difficult positions in the NFL to find someone who can actually contribute on the football field. Plus, he's a hometown-ish kid being born in University City, Missouri. But just like with Derek Nottie, we haven't really seen him take any steps forward. He played 518 snaps as a rookie, 502 in his sophomore campaign. It dropped all the way down to 149 snaps in 2022 as he was injured and appeared in just 5 games. And last season, appearing in all 17 games, he racked up just 399 snaps. The bottom line, in my opinion, is that Tershawn Wharton has come into the NFL and been decent but never improved. And here is why I am placing Fabian Levette above Tershawn Wharton. Tershawn Wharton, if I were to ask you what are his strengths, what would you say? He's not exactly a pass-rushing defensive tackle, though he is athletic for a defensive tackle. He's not a big run-stopping defensive tackle, though he is able to get in the places he needs to be. He does not have a whole lot of sacks during his career. 2 sacks as a rookie, 2 sacks in his second season, 1 sack in that abbreviated 2022, and 2 sacks last season. He's not a tackle monster, 27 tackles in 2020, 29 in 2021, 8 tackles in 2022, and 21 tackles last season. Tershawn Wharton, in my opinion, is just a solid defensive tackle. Again, he's one of these guys that is a great guy to have around as a depth piece, but I'm not sure exactly what it is that he is contributing to the defense on a snap-per-snap basis. I'm not sure what Tershawn Wharton's strengths really are. He's just a well-rounded defensive tackle. Fabian Levette, from his time in college, is a good run stopper. When you look at this list of defensive tackles, they have Chris Jones, who is your big pass rusher. You have Derek Nottie, who's a run stuffer. You have Mike Pennell, who is mostly a run stuffer and general havoc creator. Fabian Levette here, who is a legitimate run stuffer. You have Neil Farrell, who was traded for in order to give the Chiefs a big-bodied defensive tackle, and he has not quite done much to this point. Isaiah Buggs was signed to be a big-bodied defensive tackle. The Kansas City Chiefs, these past few off seasons, have brought in a string of big-sized defensive tackles that they are hoping to get a run stuffer out of, and to this point, they just haven't really worked out. And I mean, there is a long list of these guys. Last year, they even took Keandre Coburn in the draft in order to try to get that done, and it did not work. Fabian Levette fell to them out of the draft. He answered the phone on the night after the draft and became a Kansas City Chief. And I think he's going to get some opportunities to get on the field and prove himself as a run stuffer. Now, for Tershawn Wharton here, he is currently listed as the 5th defensive tackle. Last season, the Kansas City Chiefs opened the season with 5 defensive tackles. I think they might open the season this year with 6 defensive tackles, knowing that they plan to not dress Mike Pennell during the regular season, or during at least most of the regular season. He will be an active game day scratch for the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, until they get closer to the playoffs. He's going to be keeping in shape, things like that, but he will not be on the field. At least I do not think so. Leaving Neil Farrell to be that fifth defensive tackle, 6'4", 325 pounds. He was acquired from the Oakland Raiders last season, again, as an attempt to find a big-bodied run stuffer for the Kansas City Chiefs. It was a minimal type trade. The Raiders had drafted Farrell in the 4th round of the 2022 draft, and he really didn't do anything for the Raiders. He played 158 snaps as a rookie. The Chiefs traded for him the very next year, where he played only 41 snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, I'm not absolutely sold on Neil Farrell at this point. I think that he's going to have to prove some things. Matt Dickerson is a guy who has proven he can play in the NFL. I currently have him listed last there because he was already cut once by the Chiefs during this offseason. But he played 190 snaps for the Chiefs last year, so there's that as well. But Neil Farrell, I think this is a make-or-break season for him. If he's not able to find his way into the rotation this year for the Chiefs, I don't think that he's a Chief in 2025. He might not be in the NFL in 2025. We have another weight discrepancy when we start talking about Isaiah Buggs, listed at 306 by the Chiefs website, but he's listed at 335 everywhere else. He was 335 basically for his entire career. He is another one of these run-stopper type guys, but he does have some surprising athleticism. So it would not surprise me if the Kansas City Chiefs did have him focus last season while he was not playing on losing some weight to see if his athleticism can really be exploited in ways that it had not been previously during his NFL career. And with these bottom-of-the-roster type guys, sometimes all they really need is some rejuvenation somewhere. Maybe at 27 years old, starting to take some weight off will give him a little bit more bounce in his step. So it will be interesting to see what Isaiah Buggs shows up for training camp this year. Listed last here is Matt Dickerson, and I actually think that Matt Dickerson is a serviceable defensive tackle to have in rotation for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that Matt Dickerson is a guy who, if he was on any roster in the NFL, would not really surprise anyone, no matter how strong their defense is, right? That's what I'm saying, is I think he's a guy who is definitively an NFL player at defensive tackle. The reason I have him listed down here is because the Kansas City Chiefs have already cut him once this offseason. Now, probably without having seen the terms and conditions of the contract, I imagine that this is in order to say, hey, Matt, we don't think you're worth that. We like to have you around. What about this number? I think that is what was going on with that move. I think that sometimes if you're the Chiefs, you are absolutely in position to be able to say those sorts of things because Matt Dickerson wants to go home with a ring at the end of the season. Why wouldn't he? So you cut him, then you give him a call and say, hey, we really do like having you around. Here are some terms that work better for us. What do you think? Overall, looking at this list of names, it's a list of guys who kind of belong in the NFL plus Chris Jones. I mean, Derek Nottie has proven some things. Tershawn Wharton has proven some things. Mike Pennell has proven things for 3 or 4 snaps at a time. But if week 1, snap 1, Chris Jones and Matt Dickerson found themselves on the field together, I don't know what I would complain about. That said, all of that said, outside of the wide receiver position, if the Chiefs are going to make more moves this preseason, and I think they will be active in the trade market. I think they will be active in the free agent market. I think they will be active in the post-preseason cut free agent lists. I think they will be active in all of those spots potentially on some level. Defensive tackle is certainly one of the spots to look for the Kansas City Chiefs to make at least one move. Again, these are all guys that I think are NFL talents, but who do you want starting on your team and why? There is, unfortunately, I believe, no clear-cut answer outside of Chris Jones. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, talking exclusively about the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you hit that subscribe button and make sure that you are around for future videos, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.